Chapter 7. Local bird crashlands into local office of local man. Over the next few weeks, more Dementors attacked Harry. Dobby was always close by, hoping they would succeed. Harry, Ron, and Hermione got really good at barking and defending themselves from cloaked monsters. Most of them aren't scary, and one bark will send them running away from Hogwarts. Others take some angry growling. Dementors don't ask questions about who they're supposed to attack or why. They just charge at whomever they're told to. Dobby didn't stop trying to attack by his own hand. There were plenty of times that Dobby carried around a shovel and snuck up on Harry. No matter how many times he was caught and sent to work on Adam and Kevin's weird movie, Dobby came back. He was relentless. As they were walking back to the castle from their Care of Magical Creatures class, the original Professor McGonagall greeted them at the door from inside a large green bush. She had heard about the countless Dobby and Dementor attacks, and she wanted to help. "Psst," she said through the bush. "Professor McGonagall? I thought you left Hogwarts," Hermione said.
No, I've been here all along, McGonagall corrected. Anyway, I would love to help you with all the recent attacks.
How, violent citizen? Harry asked.
By teaching you. I wanted to be the physical arts teacher, but I was already assigned to recycling. Plus, there isn't a physical arts class.
They nodded, skeptical of her motives. "Why are you in a bush?" Ron asked.
It's called stealth, duh. That's the first thing I'll teach you. Lesson 1. Bushes are your friends.
"So, can you teach me how to defend myself other than running and barking?" Harry asked.
Definitely. For a price. I accept cash and fights as payment.
"Fights?" Ron asked.
If you make 2 or more people fight, then that is acceptable payment.
Several students gave strange looks as Hermione, Ron, and Harry stared at the bush in disgust. They accepted the lessons anyway and followed McGonagall to a dusty room in Hogwarts Castle. They all stood in front of McGonagall, terrified of what could happen. She held her fists up.
True heroes fight with their hands. People who use weapons are lame. It's especially good because if you get caught, they can't charge you with battery.
They nodded as she spoke, wondering if she was planning to attack without warning. Surprisingly, she was a relatively good teacher. She told them a lot of nonsense, but her fighting technique looked somewhat accurate. Finally, she sat down on the ground.
Okay, I've taught you everything I know.
"Thank you," Harry said, feeling much more confident.
I want to get a bigger spot to teach the physical arts, but I can't find any, McGonagall said. They're all taken or haunted.
"Well, no sense in using a haunted spot," Ron said. With this new skill, they were able to fight off the Dementors. Some of them became so afraid of Harry, Ron, and Hermione that they would start running at the sight of them. It kept them perfectly in line. Dobby was easy to defeat. They just picked him up and brought him to Adam and Kevin. The Dementors and Dobby aren't a problem. They haven't heard anything about Mr. and Mrs. Dursley or Sirius Black. Hogwarts became calm as the warm summer days turned into hot summer days. Towards the end of the year, everything came back. Harry and Hermione were in the common room working on homework. Hermione was feeding hers to the fire while Harry scribbled answers on his wand safety worksheet. The fire ate the corners of each sheet until only ash remained. The fire happily crackled as it burned each paper beyond recognition. Hermione was almost out of papers when she heard something in the fire. Barking. Harry immediately stood up, trying to figure out where it was coming from. "Fire? Can you talk to us?" Harry asked. "Huh? Oh, yes," the fire answered. "Fire can't talk," Hermione insisted. Harry stared into the fire. "Have you come to tell us something, dear element of fire?" "Is that you, Harry?" the fire asked. "Yes," Harry answered. "The fire knows my name," he whispered to Hermione, who was looking around the fireplace. She noticed some excess space behind the fireplace and a hatch towards the floor. She opened the small door and knelt down to look inside. Sitting on the floor was Sirius Black. "Hi," he said to Hermione. "What are you doing behind the fireplace?" Hermione demanded. "It's a good hiding place." "Get out of there!" Sirius crawled out through the hatch and stood up. Harry looked disappointed. "You mean the fire can't talk?" Sirius shook his head. "No. Sorry, Harry." "Why would you think this is a good place to hide? How did you get in here anyway?" Hermione asked. Harry gave a stern look. "Mud, the important thing is that he didn't kill anyone." "That's right," Sirius nodded. "I want to prove my innocence. I spent almost 13 years in that jail, and I don't want to spend more years on the run for something I didn't do." "Okay," Hermione began. "If you're truly innocent, someone else must have committed the crime. Who do you think would frame you?" "I think I know who, but I have to speak with an old friend first. That's who I was waiting for behind the fireplace." He pointed to the crawlspace. "I would never harm your parents, Harry." He looked at Hermione. "Or yours." He reached in his pocket and took out a folded picture. As he unfolded it, Harry saw a picture of himself and Sirius from many years ago. Harry was just an infant, but Sirius helped him hold on to a small broom. Sirius gave the picture to Harry and crawled back into the room behind the fireplace. He pulled the small hatch shut and didn't make a sound for the rest of the day. As the hours passed, they wondered who he was meeting with and why. After classes the next day, Harry, Hermione, and Ron went to the common room. Laying down under a chair was a brown rat named Scabbers. Ron looked at the rat. "How do you get out of the closet?" "Why do you keep him in the closet?" Hermione asked. "Because he's evil. He's a very bad wizard rat." Ron picked up Scabbers and walked to the stairs. Scabbers started to squeak angrily and bit Ron's hand. "Ouch!" Ron yelped as the rat jumped onto a nearby chair. He hopped off of it and ran towards the common room door. Ron, Hermione, and Harry chased after Scabbers, but he was too fast. He swerved out of their reach and ran down the halls and down 6 flights of stairs. He found his way outside and showed no signs of slowing down. They all ran through the green grass attempting to catch the rat. They got close and Ron dove to the ground, reaching for Scabbers. He was finally caught and fighting to get out of Ron's hands. They caught their breath and stood up. Before they could start walking back to the castle, they saw Professor Lupin. He turned around and looked at them. "I was just going to get you." "Follow me," he said sternly. As they walked behind Lupin, Harry wondered if they had broken some rule he didn't know about. All they did was try and catch Ron's pet. The professor didn't lead them to Dumbledore's office. He instead took them to a large tree called a Whomping Willow. At the base of the tree, there had always been a patch of discolored grass. Lupin pulled up the discolored grass like a rug, revealing the fact that it was fake. They looked closer and realized how rubbery it looked. The fake grass covered a deep tunnel. It seemed impossible for no one to have noticed this before. Lupin directed everyone to climb in. He reached into his jacket but quickly retreated his hand. He then rummaged through his pockets and found a book of matches. After more rummaging, he found a candle. He lit the candle and led the way. They walked through the dark tunnel, imagining what it could lead to. They walked on and on, following the flickering candle. Finally, they reached a door. Lupin gave the candle to Harry as he fumbled with a set of keys. He found the right one and unlocked the door. He pushed it open and took the candle back as he walked in. It was a rather large room that the candle had a hard time illuminating. It was an old, run-down, dusty shack, complete with all kinds of odd noises. A couple times, Harry swore he had seen something moving. "This is the Shrieking Shack. Here in Hogsmeade, people think it's haunted. No one ever enters. It's the perfect place to hold top-secret meetings," Lupin explained. "How did you find out about it?" Hermione asked. Lupin chuckled. "Back in the day, I researched ghosts. I checked countless creaky old houses and never found one place that was haunted. Since this place was so close to Hogwarts, I offered it as a safe and secret place to the headmaster in exchange for a job when I finally stopped believing in ghosts. Then I told everyone in Hogsmeade that this is the most haunted house I had ever seen. Only a certain kind of person would enter a haunted shack like this." As soon as he uttered those words, they heard someone coming towards the boarded and locked front door. "A snake person. They are the only kind of people who would enter a haunted house," Lupin said quickly. "They must have heard about the rare snakes in here." "Snakes?" Hermione repeated. "But they can't get through the door, right?" Ron asked. "It's locked and boarded." From outside, they heard a chainsaw. Lupin picked up some black cloaks on the ground. "Snake people will always find a way. Here, quickly put these over you." Lupin blew out the candle and disappeared under his cloak, and the rest of them hid under theirs. The snake person cut a Slytherin student-sized hole in the door and climbed through. He put a dark blanket over the hole and restored the darkness. Through a tear in the cloak, Harry immediately recognized him as Draco Malfoy. He started looking for snakes, and Harry got an idea. The darkness makes dark colors disappear and light colors fairly visible. Harry quietly stood up and took the cloak off of his head. His body blended in with the darkness and he looked like a floating head. Malfoy picked up the snake he found and turned around. He saw Harry's decapitated head and screamed. With the snake, he ran out of the shack. "All right, I got rid of him," Harry announced. Hermione and Ron stood up as Lupin relit the candle. "Good job. Stay here. I'll be back." Lupin went back through the tunnel door and shut it behind him. They stayed in the shack for a very long time. They finally heard someone from the tunnel and were relieved to receive further instruction and explanation. Instead of Lupin opening the door, someone they had never seen entered. He had rough, long blonde hair and blue eyes. His face strongly reminded Harry of a rat. "Hiya, friends," he greeted in a friendly tone. "Did you eat Professor Lupin?" Harry asked, noticing the person was overweight. He laughed loudly before answering. "No, of course not." He continued to laugh. "Ho ho 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 ho." They couldn't help but think he was being fake. "I'm Peter Pettigrew." "Oh yeah," Harry remembered. "My dad talked about you once. He and his friends tried avoiding you, but they never could." Pettigrew initially looked angry, but he softened his face. "Anyway, I have some bad news. I had to go into hiding a long time ago because someone tried to kill me. Being here is really risky, but I need to tell you the truth." Okay, ratty citizen," Harry replied. "Sirius Black kept a lot of secrets. He knew how to act all nice and innocent, but he killed those 12 people for no reason. He tried to kill me too, but luckily I was able to fake my own death and escape." He did not, Harry shouted. He's got you under his spell. He's using magic, Harry. Don't you know what he did once he got out of jail? Harry shook his head. He betrayed your parents. He gave their location to the Dursleys. Harry looked like he had been stabbed in the back. That's how Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon found them? Yes, Pettigrew answered. Why? Harry demanded. I don't believe it. They're loose ends. They knew about his crimes. The tunnel door flew open and Lupin walked in with Sirius Black. Pettigrew, if you're going to lie, at least make it slightly convincing, Lupin said coldly. Pettigrew glared at them. What's the truth, then? Hermione asked. This rat is a liar. I imagine everything he said was either a complete lie or he switched around the names, Sirius said. Somehow Scabbers looked offended. Who killed the 12 muggles? Ron asked. Rat boy Peter Pettigrew, Lupin answered. I did not, Pettigrew protested. You gave the Dursleys Lily and James Potter's location. You killed 12 people, you faked your own death, and then you framed me, Sirius growled. It ends here. He reached for something in his coat. Wait, Harry yelled. Don't use your magic to kill him. That's not the superhero thing to do. Fine, we'll take him to jail, Lupin sighed. Pettigrew bolted for the door to Hogsmeade Village and broke it down. He escaped the shack and ran through the streets of Hogsmeade. They stood dumbfoundedly in the room that Pettigrew had just escaped. Harry? Sirius started. Yeah? Harry asked, staring blankly at the doorway. Next time, let me kill him. Okay. They went back through the tunnel and headed to the castle to discuss things with Dumbledore. Even though they were each deep in thought about what had happened, they all loudly barked down the halls to get by the Dementors. Students whispered as they caught a glimpse of the escaped convict. The brown gargoyles stared at them as they walked toward the doors at the end of the dark corridor. They entered through the heavy doors and caught Dumbledore off guard. Fawkes flew out of the room as Dumbledore stood at his desk, staring at Sirius, a hint of panic setting in. Have no fear, citizen. Uncle Sirius is innocent, Harry announced. Professor Lupin took a few steps forward. We were wrong. Luckily, the Grangers have been investigating this for years. They invited me over to discuss the betrayal of Lily and James Potter. You were talking with my parents? Hermione interrupted. Yes, Lupin answered quickly. You really should return home now and then, or at least read their letters. I don't want to, Hermione said honestly. But you really should, Lupin strongly suggested. Anyway, they've been working on this for all these years since he's an old family friend, and they wanted to do something good for a change. Yes, of course, Dumbledore nodded. And? They managed to convince me to look into Peter Pettigrew. We never liked him, Lupin continued. And I smelled a rat that fateful day, Sirius growled. They held on to a hunch that Pettigrew was still alive, Lupin said. What was the hunch? Dumbledore asked, getting a little more comfortable with Sirius in the room. Nothing really, he just seemed guilty, Lupin explained. They used their connections to keep an eye out for him. Finally, they found him, stuffing his face at a Burger Queen. They told Sirius to escape so that he could capture Pettigrew and bring him to the police, which would prove his innocence. Unfortunately, the rat was too smart, Sirius said in disgust. Somehow he found Lily and James Potter's location and threatened to leak it if I came near him. I stayed away. I tried to think of a plan. The rat leaked it anyway. Must have had a good reason, whatever it was. Knowing him, it could have been McClown's coupons. Aunt Petunia and Uncle Vernon, Harry realized. They would offer a lot of money for my parents' location. After a private meeting, we decided to bring Harry and his friends in on what was going on, since, Dumbledore nodded as Lupin kept talking. While Sirius and I were out of the room, Pettigrew, the rat, showed up and tried to put the blame on me, Sirius interrupted in a meaner tone. He tried to convince them that I was an evil murderer and that he had to go into hiding to be safe. Peter Pettigrew is really alive? Dumbledore asked. Yes, Hermione answered. We all saw him. He definitely did it, Ron agreed. Harry nodded. Uncle Sirius is innocent. Something outside Dumbledore's window caught Harry's attention. A bird was flying straight towards the closed window. Dumbledore noticed Harry's faraway gaze and looked outside. He saw the bird and quickly opened the window. As it got closer, they heard it singing loudly and saw that its eyes were closed. He flew through the now open window and crash-landed on Dumbledore's desk, rolling into a cup of quills and knocking it onto the floor. The sudden noise startled Scabbers and he bit Ron's hand. After hearing Ron yelp, the tiny gray owl stood and shook his feathers. He flew towards Ron, picked up Scabbers, and carried him out of the window. They curiously watched the owl as he dove down and dropped Scabbers near the ground. He went back up to Dumbledore's office and started to fly around Ron. He landed on his shoulder and leaned against his cheek. Perhaps you should keep him to make sure he doesn't injure himself out in the wild, Dumbledore suggested. Ron tried looking at the owl, who was still affectionately leaning against him. He got rid of Scabbers. He's the greatest owl in the world. Aw, he's really cute, Hermione said as she pet the small owl's feathers. Dumbledore cleared his throat. Ahem. About Sirius Black. "Oh, right," Harry said, looking away from the grey bird. "I don't think the sighting of Peter Pettigrew is enough to clear your name," Dumbledore said empathetically. "Personally, I do believe you. Because of that, I can get you a horse and look the other way." "Thank you, sir," Sirius exclaimed gratefully. "I'll help in any way I can," Lupin said. "I'm sure we can find some more old friends willing to help our cause." "Take all the time you need. I've become very good at hiring wand safety professors," Dumbledore commented. "Hold on," Harry started. "If you two are both friends with my dad, then why did he choose Uncle Sirius to be my godfather?" Harry asked. "They weren't going to have a godfather originally, but they decided to since it's been my dream to be a godfather. Like the movies," Sirius answered. Hermione looked confused. "Shouldn't you have recognized Professor Lupin's name if he was friends with your dad?" "I did," Harry said bluntly. "I wouldn't follow a stranger into a dark tunnel. That would be a horrible idea." Sirius yelped. He cleared his throat. "Sorry about that." A bittersweet conclusion came, and they walked out of the office and into the gargoyle corridor once more. Soon enough, Sirius accepted a horse from Hagrid and left Hogwarts. Unsure of when he'd return, they went back inside to the house championship. The cafeteria was full of ecstatic students and professors who had just found out the Dementors and guards would be leaving. The end-of-term feast was sitting in front of them as Dumbledore made his end-of-year speech. "I'm sure you all are eager to hear the House Cup winner and to eat. This year, the house with the most points is Hufflepuff." "Aw, this was our year," Ron said. "Actually, it makes sense considering all the things we did," Hermione reasoned. "Nope, I can't accept this," Harry decided. "It's rigged. Right, Gryffindor?" "Rigged! Rigged!" Gryffindor started chanting with Harry. "Rigged! Rigged! Rigged! Rigged!" Even Ron's new owl started hooting in support. "Guys!" Hermione shouted. "This is exactly the stuff that makes us lose!" Harry stood up in his favorite superhero pose. "Don't worry, fellow Gryffindors. I vow to make sure we win next year." "How are you going to do that?" Ron asked. Harry smiled. "I have an idea." The next morning, they went to Hogsmeade Station with all of their belongings and got on the train. Once they sat down, Ron opened a new bag of drugs. The train left Hogsmeade and started its trip back to King's Cross Station. The end. I hope you enjoyed Harry Potter and the Barking from Azkaban. Want to hear more about that plan of Harry's? All will be revealed in Harry Potter and the Ballot Box of Fire.